Hi students, in the last video we mentioned about how are we able to separate the solid liquid mixture. So let's look further down. So in the solid liquid mixture, we also have some factors in mind to consider before we apply the methods to separate them. First thing, is the solid soluble in the liquid or not? That's number one. Number two, can this solid be stable under heating? Meaning, will this solid decompose when you apply heating to it? And lastly, what do you want to obtain? So let's look at this flowchart that's nicely summarized how do we do it. So in a solid liquid mixture, for example, we have three examples that I can think of: salt and water, sand and water, sugar and water. I just use water because it's quite a common liquid that we can see. I can also consider other liquid as well. So let's say if I want to obtain the sand from water, so what do I do? So I must ask myself, is sand soluble in water or not? No, right? So in this case, if the sand is not soluble in water, if I want to obtain the sand, I'll use filtration. Why? Because filtration is to separate insoluble solids from the liquid. And now let's look at the other two examples. I know that salt is soluble in water, sugar is also soluble in water. So since they are soluble in water, I can look at the flow chart on the left side, because once these two solids dissolve in water, it will form a solution. And if I want to obtain the solid, meaning if I want to obtain salt or sugar, what do? I need to ask myself another question. Will this salt and sugar, right, when I heat up, will it decompose or not? So what does decompose mean? Decompose means break down. So you must use yourself as an example. For example, when you're heating the salt by itself under a fire, and you're heating sugar itself under fire, which one will decompose based on your own experience? The sugar, right? Because you notice that after you heat sugar under fire, after some time, the sugar will become black color. So in this case, since the sugar decompose upon heating, I cannot use evaporation to dryness. So I need to use crystallization as a technique to obtain sugar from the solution. But if the salt is stable under heat, you can use evaporation to dryness. But for evaporation to dryness, there's a consideration to consider. For example, sometimes we can have some soluble impurities in the solution. So when you evaporate all the liquids away from the solution, you notice that there will be salt remain, and there will also be other soluble impurities that we cannot differentiate as well. So this is the downside of evaporation to dryness. So in the event of this situation, you can also use crystallization to obtain the solid. And crystallization is an enhanced method. Why? Because it can be used to purify solids. Okay, so it can be used to obtain pure solids. That's the good thing about crystallization. And so let's say if I don't want to obtain the solid, I want to obtain liquid instead. What do? I can use simple distillation. So all these methods that you have seen in this flowchart here are familiar to you, except for crystallization. So in the next few videos, you'll take a look what are these methods about, and what are some common key terms that you need to take note for these few methods. Thank you.